Hi friends, Data Platform Central is back with another weekly edition. In this weekly edition, we are going to again introduce before you a new feature which got released in Azure Data Factory, which helps you in doing data validations inside your ETL ELT flow quite easily. This new transformation is known as the Assert Transformation, where you can specify your validation rules and create some assert statements. The validation rules might include the checking of a particular field like the exist condition check, or it can be a regex pattern match, like say whether the phone number is valid or email is valid, or it can even be whether a particular value exists within another reference set. So there are different ways in which you can implement your validation checks. So in this illustration, Data Platform Central is going to show you a typical practical use case where you could make use of this Assert Transform so as to implement your own business logic based validations. And once we implement it, you can make use of the result that Assert Transformation provides for either populating a value in your database, or maybe use it for further manipulations, execution flow manipulations within your ADF pipelines. So let's see how we can make use of this Assert Transformation and implement such a custom requirement based on the quality of the data that you are getting from a source. To start off the demo, we are going to make use of a sample file which is going to represent some of the field orders for us. So field orders are nothing but the orders which are captured as a part of some campaigns, and we have the order details being listed in a nice little CSV list, and there are few issues with the data which is coming through the list. Like there are some cases where the email addresses are not valid, there are some cases where the phone number is not in accordance with the actual format in which it should be captured in the system. There are some cases where there are some invalid advisor names available. So different issues associated with this data. Now the intention for us is to use this sheet as the source and place or assert some validation rules on top of it. So we will be implementing it using Assert Transformation inside our ADF when we do the ELT ETL operations. And the Assert Transform will identify the validation violations based on the rules that we set, and using that violation information we will be directing the data to multiple output files so as to give the user an opportunity to look into the data inaccuracies which is present inside the file so that he can correct and then resubmit the wrong data rows along. So let's see how we can do that. So the first step for us is to put this file into a storage. So we are going to put it into an Azure blob storage, and then we are going to create a linked service inside our pipeline so as to access this file, and then we will continue by applying the Assert Transformation, and using the information provided by the Assert Transformation we can then do the redirection and any other corrective action for converting the wrong rows to the corresponding files and populating the correct data onto the final table. So let's see how we can do that. So we have created a Azure blob storage account, and inside that we have created a folder called my source files, to which we have uploaded this file which consists of the field order details. So now let's go back and create a new package, a pipeline inside our Azure Data Factory account, and then we can start accessing this file. So let's go to the home page of the Azure Data Factory. Let's go to the author tab, from where we are going to create a new pipeline. So go to plus pipeline, new pipeline option, and inside that we are going to use a data flow. So Assert Transformation is available as a transformation inside a data flow. So we need to start by creating a data flow. So now let's go to the settings, and we are going to attach a new data flow to that. This is going to be a fresh data flow, and we are going to start by connecting to our source, which is the file that we have placed inside the Azure blob storage. So let's click on new and Azure blob storage, the delimited text, and then let's go and create a new linked service. Select the subscription, Azure subscription, and you will have the storage account available inside that. you can click on test connection, and once the connection is successful, then the file will be connected. So you can now browse to the file. So it is inside my source files, and the file name is field source details, and the first row would be the header. Click on OK, and you can now check the source projections and see whether the structure resembles the structure. So this is exactly the data which is coming through your file. So now that you have connected to the file, the next option for us would be to do a Assert transformation. So if you click on the plus icon, you'll be able to see that there is an option called Assert Transformation available inside your data flow as a part of the row modifier. So you need to select that, and then immediately it will ask you a few things. Like there are two options that you can see now. One is expect true, another one is expect unique. Expect true is for checking the incoming data against a format. Expect unique is nothing but you are applying a unique constraint on the incoming data. There is one more which is called expect excesses, and that will be available when you attach a second stream to that. So the main validations we are going to do in this illustration are: one, whether the phone is of valid format; second, the email address is of a valid format; third one is whether the entry is unique. So we identify unique here by taking the combination of customer and the order. So we will check if the order ID, customer name and the email is a unique combination. So for that we can make use of the expect unique. And there is one more, that is whether the sales advisor is valid. For that we have set of sales advisors that we have already stored inside one of our Azure SQL DB. So this is the database which has the details of these staffs. These are the sales advisors. So we can create a reference data set using this and compare with that. So once you add that reference data set here, automatically the third option will also be enabled, which will help you to compare the incoming values against this particular stream which you are providing as a reference stream. So we will be doing all these activities inside the same Assert transformation. So let's now start doing them one by one. First step would be to check if the email is valid. So what we can do is, like, we can set it as expect true itself, and for the assert ID we are going to name it as check email, and the description you can add any meaningful description. I am going to set the description as email is not valid. So this is the message that will be returned whenever the validation of the email fails. So once we have defined all these things, then the last one would be the expression. This is where you will use the regex match. So here we will use the regex match function, and then for the string you need to pass the column from which you are getting the value. So in this case we need to take it from the email column and then regex match. So here this is where you need to pass the actual regular expression so as to match the valid email. So you can use any simple kind of regular expressions. I am just using a simplistic regular expression which will match the normal type of email. So that means any names followed by the @ symbol, then another name and dot. So this is like a very basic regex expression which can be used for validating your emails. And generally if you see the regex match for emails, that's a very big expression so as to ensure you cover all the cases. Here the main intention is just to show you how to implement the basic functionality. So we are just choosing one of the basic regex patterns. So now that we have defined how we need to do the email validation, we need to do the same for checking on the phone. So let's name this check phone, and here the message will be phone number not valid. Again here also you can go and create an expression based on regex match, and for the string we need to pass the phone number in this case. So the first one would be phone number, and the second one would be the actual regex pattern that we will pass. Again we are going to pass a simple regex pattern here just to make sure that the phone number is coming correctly in 3 sets. The first one will be a set of 3 numbers and a set of 3 numbers, and finally a set of 4 numbers. So we are again selecting a very simple format and make sure that the incoming number is same. So now that we added twice, now the third one would be to implement the uniqueness. So for getting the uniqueness we need to have a composite combination. So here we have a customer in a different column and order ID coming in a different column. So what we are going to do is we are going to add a derived column before the assert so as to create the unique key. So I'm going to name this the unique key, and the unique key will consist of the order ID, and first we need to convert it into string because it's a numerical data now. So order ID, then let's add a delimiter, and then the customer name and the email. Again a delimiter to show that this is a different value, and then finally the email. So we'll get this as the unique combination, and so you have named it as unique key. So let's come here now and add the third one, and here it will be expect unique, and here we are going to check if it's a duplicate entry, and the message will be entry is duplicate, and the column would be here. What we need to do is we need to pass the column which is going to be checked against the uniqueness. So in this case we need to select the column as the unique. So now we have added three conditions. First one to check for the email, second one is to check for the form, and third one is to check whether the entry itself is a unique entry. And then we need to add the last one. For getting the last one, because we want to compare to a reference data set, we are going to add one more source. So then we need to add the source, then go to the linked services, and we are going to get it from a Azure SQL database. So add a new one, select your subscription, select the server name. That's the only server inside my subscription, and the database is ABC Bytes. And then we need to first test connection. I have already given the username and password before, which is why it is saving it. Otherwise you need to pass it the username and password as well. So now that the linked service is created, you need to go to the staff table. So the table name is staff table, and you can click on OK. If you check our file, you can see that we have the full name coming here, whereas in the table you have the field coming in two different fields. So one is coming as first name and the last name. So we need to first merge or concatenate both of them into a single column before we compare. So let's come back and let's add a derived column for that, and let's name it advisor name, and we are going to concatenate the first name and the last name. The first name plus space plus last name. So now you will get the advisor, complete advisor name inside that. So once you have this, now you can come back to the assert, and we are going to use this derived column to output as the second string. So once you use this at the second string, now you will get this new option which is for comparing between them. So it's called expect exists. This option will be enabled only when you pass this additional string. So select expect exists, and now we need to rename this as well. So we need to rename this now to invalid advisor, and the message should be advisor doesn't exist, and then we need to compare between the advisor names from both the places. So first one would be the advisor column, and the other one would be the advisor name column. So between advisor and advisor name we will compare, and it will check if it exists. So now you have added all the rules, and each of the rule has a name. This is the name that we will be using for referring hereafter for checking for that particular rule, and this will be the corresponding error message which will be returned when the rule is violated. So now that you have created this, now let's go ahead and add the next step. So the next step is again going to be a derived column, and here we are going to get the error messages. So the first one would be, we are just naming it as total errors. This is just to give all the error messages associated with the row, and we have a new function which is added as a part of this assert transform. It's called assert error messages. So once you call this function, it will provide you with the full list of errors which are associated with the row, and whenever we need to separate it out, that is also possible. So we are going to get each of those errors. So error in email. So then what we need to do is, like, we will call this assert error messages. It will provide you with the full list of error message, out of which we will extract using at function the error message corresponding to the assertion. So in this case, what is the name of our assertion? So our assertion's name was check email. So we'll go back and we'll add check email inside that. So it will return you the error message which is associated to the check email. Similarly, we can add the corresponding error message for others. So we have added all the error messages associated to each of those errors and in a derived column. So now if you see, all these columns will be available for your output. Now what we need to do is, we need to add a conditional split. We are going to split each of these rows based on the errors they have. So depending on the error they have, we will be redirecting them to a different file, and then all the rows without any error will be redirected to the actual output. So let's click on next, and let's select select transformation, because we don't need all the columns. So we are going to remove the unwanted ones. So in the first level, we are going to only include the email related errors, because this is going to go to the email related file. We don't require anything from the staff table also, because we are just using it to check for the validity of the advisor. So we can remove all the columns coming from the staff as well, and even the unique key as well. So now we have the wanted columns now here, so we can now redirect it to a file. So before that, let's add a conditional split, and here we will be defining the output based on each of those error messages. So the first stream, let's name it invalid email ones, and we are in the condition going to use hash error function to check for that particular. So we have a function called hash error, and this hash error will accept the assert name as a parameter. So we are going to pass the assert name, which is going to give us the details of, so the assert name is check email. So when you put check email, what is going to happen is that anything which fails this assertion will be pushed on to this particular conditional state. And similarly, the second one would be invalid phone. So we have created 5 outputs, 4 for each of those errors, and then for the final one. And if you want, we can add one more which will keep all errors, and we are going to OR all these conditions here. So we have defined all the condition splits so as to divert our output based on the validation results of our incoming data. Now the only other thing you need to be careful is that instead of splitting on the first matching condition, you need to give it all matching conditions. This will ensure that even if there is a row which has multiple errors, it will be diverted to all those outputs, so that the row will be captured against each of these errors. And finally, we have this all errors where all the error rows will be captured. So now that we have defined these split streams based on various conditions, we need to go ahead and add a select transform in each of those outputs, so that the number of columns will only match the columns that is coming from our main stream and also the corresponding error message. So if it is an invalid phone, we will only get the error corresponding to invalid phone and also the columns which are coming from the main table. We will not add anything from the reference table or any other kind of error details. So what we can do is we can add this in each of those output streams. Once you add those select transforms and attach them to the corresponding sinks, your package will look like this. Each one of them will have a select transform which will only contain the error message corresponding to that particular branch, plus the columns which are coming from the main input stream, which is the order related details. And then corresponding to that, you will have a sink which will again point to a file within your blob storage, the same blob storage where you had your source file. If you want, you can put it to a different file and choosing the same folder itself. And inside that, there are 2 settings that you need to do. One is that you will always put it to a single file. So there is an option in the file name where you specify output to a single file, and each file will be specified a different name. For example, the invalid advisor, I have named it like invalidadvisor.csv, and similarly for the other one, the invalid email, I have specified invalid email. So correspondingly, I have named the file name so as to identify what type of data they contains. The third one is called a duplicate entry, etc. And the another one is, in order to put the output onto a single file, I have set it to a single partition, which is a requirement. If you are not putting it to a single partition, you will not be able to dump them into a single file. So if you just set it here to a single file, but you have not set it to a single partition, the validation will throw an error. So now that we have done everything, let's validate it. So everything is correct. So we are going to now publish our package, and once you publish and execute it, you can see all these files being saved inside your folder. And if you go to each of those files, they will provide the corresponding details. So the invalid entry will contain all the invalid advisor entries, the invalid email will contain the invalid emails, and so on. And finally, you will have one file called valid rows, where you will have all the rows without any kind of error message being diverted to that particular file. So let's see that. Keep refreshing the execution of the package until the execution of the package is done. So once you see the green tick, it means that the execution of the package was successful. Now let's go back and check our storage account. So if you go back and refresh the storage account, you will be able to see all the files. So as you see, you can see the all error files, the duplicate entry files, invalid advisor, invalid email, invalid phone, and finally the valid rows. This is the source file, and these are the destination files it generated. Now let's check one by one. Let's download the files and check if these files contains the expected data. Let's open the location where the files are saved, and let's try one by one So first is the duplicate entry. It should have only the two instances of a single record which is repeating. As you see, both the records are having the same unique key value, so which means that our file has correctly identified them as duplicate entry and they have moved it. Now let's move to the second one and see all the errors. This will contain the details of every error that happened. So as you see, you can see the total errors here. So this is an example where the email was not valid. You can check the email. It was a invalid email. Second case was this invalid advisor. We don't have an advisor called Harmia Masham in our database. You can check it against the database. You can't see that Harmia Masham. Now if you go to the third one, you can see that's also another example of invalid advisor. Then the fourth one is the phone number. As you see, the phone number is not in the correct format, and fifth and sixth are the duplicate entries, and again you have the check email. So that means that it is correctly identifying all the errors and it is bringing it into the file names. Now finally, if you go and check the other files, so invalid advisor, it will only contain the details of the invalid advisor. So the advisor doesn't exist. So that's the example of invalid advisor. And similarly, if you go to invalid email, you will get that one entry with wrong email. So there are two entries with wrong email. So as you see, it's correctly diverting the wrong entries to the corresponding files. So invalid phone means it will have that one entry with wrong phone number. And finally, you can go and check the valid rows, which will contain the details of all the other entries which doesn't have any errors. So this will contain all the other entries which has no errors. So if you go and check the count, it will be 102. So out of the total, 102 didn't have any issues. All the others had some kind of an issue. So this shows that our package worked well and it was able to identify the different errors happening within your data based on the Assert transformation rules that we set, and it identified the violations and moved them to the corresponding files. So this gives an example of how the Assert transformation can be used to impose certain validations based on your business logic on the incoming data, and then identify the violations based on that, so that this can be then later mailed back to the users so that they can take a look and correct the data before they send it. Hope this quick illustration video helped you to understand how the recently introduced Assert transformation can be used inside your ADF pipeline so as to impose your own business logic based validations, and how the violations of the validations can be captured, and based on the validation errors you can redirect your execution flow to a particular branch so as to capture the error information and pass it down to the source of the file. As usual, keep sending your feedback and let me know your comments on how you find these useful videos. Feel free to follow my channel for getting useful tips like this, and make sure you subscribe and hit on the bell icon for getting notifications on any new videos. We are releasing weekly videos on Azure as well as on Power BI based technologies. So hoping to meet you soon with another useful quick tip like this. Till then, bye and thanks for it.